The door hissed, and Emily stepped into the ICU, clutching a worn purse as if it could hold back time. Machines blinked like indifferent stars, and the room smelled of antiseptic and rain. Emily said, "Please, just tell me he's stable." Dr. Harris looked at her, and his shoulders fell before his eyes did. Dr. Harris said, "I'm sorry the treatment failed tonight." The words cracked the air like glass, and her knees thought about the floor. Emily said, "No, he was better this morning. He was joking about breakfast." The monitor drew green hills that rose and dipped, unbothered by the human storm. She reached for Noah's hand and found warmth, and that betrayed her fear. Emily said, "Hey kid, I'm here, I'm right here." Somewhere a cart rattled, and the hallway swallowed a nurse's whisper. Dr. Harris said, "We can transfer him, but the odds are steep." The rain tattooed the window and gave the night a heartbeat. Emily said, "Then move the mountain, move it now." She slid a small box deeper into her purse, a secret waiting for courage. Hope tasted like metal, but she breathed it anyway. Dawn peeled the night from the kitchen, and the world smelled like wet pavement and coffee. Emily stood at the sink, counting bills as if counting could save anything. The hospital's sentence repeated, thin as wire and just as sharp. Emily said, "We will breathe through this 1 minute at a time." The house held the ghost of Noah's laughter, lodged in the corners like sunlight. She remembered his last joke about cereal prizes, and the memory ached. Emily said, "You always find the prize, even when the box lies." She unscrewed a jar of coins and felt its small gravity. The purse sat on the table, heavier with what it carried and what it promised. The velvet box pressed against the lining like a heartbeat. Emily said, "I'll give it to you when I'm brave enough." Outside, a bus sighed, and the day started for people who did not know them. She folded the bills into a stubborn stack and lifted her chin. The kettle hissed, and courage rose with the steam. The bus stop bench remembered their summers, and Emily let it speak. She saw Noah at 12, chasing gulls, and at 16, fixing a neighbor's bike with quiet pride. Emily said, "You always mend what breaks even me." A boy on a scooter flashed by and left laughter in his slipstream. The wind pushed a flyer across her shoe, a cheap miracle in paper. Emily said, "Today I will bargain with fear and pay in hope." She imagined Noah's eyes narrowing when he solved a stubborn knot. The image steadied her like a hand on a railing. Cars hissed past, and the city kept its enormous, indifferent pulse. Emily said, "If there is a road, we will take it." She touched the purse to make sure the box still rode the tide with her. A cloud moved, and light found her face and did not flinch. She decided the gift would be a promise she could keep. At the kitchen table, she opened a cedar box that smelled like forest and thyme. Inside lay ticket stubs, a seashell, and a compass that once found a lost trail. Emily said, "You always asked where home is." She unfolded a letter half written, and felt the tremor of its unsent truth. The pen hovered, then found the road it needed. Emily said, "Home is where your name is safe." She wrapped the compass in linen, as if tucking in a child. The velvet box waited, becoming the shape of her promise. She pressed the letter's edges flat and kissed the paper like a secret. Emily said, "When you leave, you will not be empty." Quiet gathered, and for once, it did not accuse her. The clock tossed seconds into the air, and they did not fall back. She slid the letter and compass into the box and closed the lid on fear. Evening found her by Noah's door, listening to the tide of his breathing. The day had battered her, yet left this shore intact. Emily said, "I have something for you, but not yet." She stepped inside and traced the constellations he stuck on the ceiling. They glowed like promises that refused to sleep. Emily said, "You once named that one after the dog we never had." Noah shifted and murmured a word that almost sounded like faith. She placed the velvet box in the drawer of his nightstand and closed it softly. Emily said, "Tomorrow, we will talk about leaving and what we carry." The word leaving did not feel like surrender tonight. It felt like a map with room for miracles. She sat on the edge of the bed and let the quiet hold them both. In that hush, She chose to believe the door would open to light. Emily sat with bills fanned across the table like a losing hand of cards. Each number pressed against her chest, heavy and merciless. Emily said, "How many jobs does it take to keep one boy breathing?" The refrigerator hummed like a cruel reminder of unpaid power. She thought of the velvet box waiting, and it mocked her courage. Emily said, "If love were money, we'd be millionaires." A knock startled her, and her neighbor Mrs. Lane peeked in, balancing a pie and worry. Mrs. Lane said, "You look worn thin, Emily." Emily forced a smile, though her eyes betrayed exhaustion. She whispered, "I'll manage." The pie smelled of cinnamon and comfort, but Emily could not taste safety. She stacked the bills and told herself they would not break her spine. In the silence that followed, she reached for her pen to calculate survival. Emily wiped her eyes before Noah entered the room. He leaned against the doorway, thin but smiling, his voice fragile yet stubborn. Noah said, "You look like you're solving the world's hardest puzzle." Emily forced a laugh, though it cracked. Emily said, "I might be." Noah walked closer, his hand brushing her shoulder. "Noah," said Mom, "I don't want you breaking yourself for me." Emily bit the words she wanted to say. She whispered, "You're worth breaking for." The silence after hung like glass between them. Noah grinned faintly, trying to stitch hope into the air. He said, "Then we'll solve it together." She nodded, though her heart ached knowing some puzzles had no answer. The clinic waiting room smelled of bleach and despair. Emily held Noah's file, its weight heavier than iron. A receptionist whispered into a phone, her eyes darting at the mother and son. Emily said, "Just one chance, that's all I'm asking." The doctor emerged, his coat wrinkled, his tone sharper than his words. Dr. Harris said, "Emily, the treatments cost more than you can manage. Without insurance, options are few." Her throat burned, but her voice was steady. Emily said, "Then I'll find a way." Noah squeezed her hand, and his silence carried 1,000 unsaid words. She sat straighter, daring the room to argue with a mother's resolve. Rain followed them home like a second shadow. Umbrella forgotten, Emily walked fast, while Noah coughed softly. She said, "We're almost there, hold on." He laughed weakly, breath misting in the cold. Noah said, "You always run from storms, Mom." She shook her head, gripping his hand tighter. Emily said, "Not this storm." Her hair clung to her face, but she didn't care. Neighbors closed blinds against the night, while mother and son carried on. The pavement gleamed like black glass beneath their shoes. Emily whispered, "If love were shelter, you'd never know rain." Back inside, Emily lit a candle when the power flickered. Shadows stretched long across the walls. Noah sat wrapped in a blanket, his cheeks flushed. Emily said, "We'll get through this, I promise." He smiled faintly, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Noah said, "Even promises can't fight the dark forever." She kissed his forehead, tasting salt and heat. Emily said, "Then I'll be the light until you can." The candle flames swayed, casting their faces in fragile gold. The velvet box in the drawer seemed to hum, waiting for its moment. Emily sat close, her heart a shield against the storm outside. Emily sorted medicine bottles on the table, their labels a cruel alphabet of warnings. Each pill rattled like a countdown. Emily said, "We'll follow the schedule, Noah, we'll keep the rhythm." Noah leaned back in his chair, pale and thin, his smile dim but defiant. "Noah," said, "you make it sound like music." She nodded, though the notes hurt her ears. The neighbors' laughter bled through the walls, reminding her of a normal life denied. Emily pressed her hand to her chest, steadying her breath. Emily said, "I'll rewrite the song if I have to." Noah's cough interrupted, brittle and sharp. He whispered, "Don't lose yourself for me." She kissed his hair, tasting salt and hope. At the pharmacy, Emily clutched her wallet like armor. Shelves glowed sterile under neon lights. The pharmacist avoided her eyes while scanning the bill. Emily said, "There must be another option." His sigh was practiced, the the words automatic. Pharmacist said without coverage, "This is the price." The receipt printed like a death sentence. Emily's hands trembled as she signed, the pen digging grooves into paper. Noah stood beside her, lips pressed tight, his silence loud. Emily said, "We'll manage somehow." The lie cracked in her throat, but she let it live. She pushed the bag into her purse as if hiding shame. Back home, Emily spread coins across the table, like stars scattered by fate. She counted them again and again, but the total mocked her. Emily said, "This won't even cover a week." Her voice was hollow. Noah came closer, dropping a folded comic book beside her. "Noah," said Trade, it's rare. Might be worth something." She looked at him, startled by his sacrifice. Emily said, "No, your dreams don't go on sale." He shrugged, his boyhood still stubborn in his gestures. Emily's tears blurred the numbers, but she kept counting, her hands shaking. The storm outside rattled the windows as Emily answered the phone. A voice from her past dripped with familiarity and menace. Mark said, "I heard about Noah. Maybe I can help for a price." Her jaw clenched, fingers gripping the receiver. Emily said, "I don't need your bargains." Mark chuckled, his silence afterward louder than words. She hung up, heart pounding, bile in her throat. Noah, from across the room, looked up. Noah said, "Who was that?" She forced a smile, her mask brittle. Emily said, "No one we need." But the air felt heavier, as if secrets crowded the house. Later, Noah lay in bed, his cough shaking the silence. Emily sat on the edge, stroking his hair, her eyes red from battles fought alone. "Noah," said Mom, "what if I don't make it?" Her heart collapsed, but her voice stood tall. Emily said, "Then I'll carry you anyway." His hand reached for hers, trembling but warm. She pressed it against her chest like a vow. Emily whispered, "I will never let you go, not even in the dark." Outside, thunder rolled, but inside, her promise glowed like fragile firelight. Emily woke to the sound of Noah coughing, the kind that rattled through walls. She rushed in, her heart thudding like a drum. Emily said, "Breathe, baby. Stay with me." His chest heaved, eyes wide with fear. She pressed the inhaler to his lips, whispering steady words as if they could shape air itself. The medicine hissed, time stretched, and finally his breath softened. Noah said, "I'm okay, I think." Emily's arms wrapped him tightly, her tears falling on his hair. She whispered, "You scare me into pieces." He smiled weakly, a fragile attempt at courage. The night felt endless, but she held on as if holding him could stop time. Morning brought gray skies and silence. Emily sat by the window, staring at unpaid bills while Noah slept. The rain tapped, relentless. She whispered, "What do I sell first, my pride or my past?" The purse by her feet felt heavier with every glance. She pulled the velvet box halfway out, thumb brushing the edge. Emily said, "Soon, I'll give this to you when I can say goodbye without breaking." Noah stirred, muttering in his sleep, "Don't go." Her heart cracked, the words cutting deeper than knives. She slid the box back, shame and love tangled together. At the clinic again, Emily argued with Dr. Harris, her voice breaking but fierce. Emily said there must be something, a trial, anything. He shook his head, words heavy with pity. Dr. Harris said, "I wish I had better news." Noah sat silently, his eyes lowered, listening to fate being spoken like weather. Emily slammed the file shut, her knuckles white. Emily said, "No one decides for him but me." The room stilled, even the clock seemed to hold its breath. Noah whispered, "Mom, please don't fight them for me." She turned, her heart caught between strength and despair. That night, Mark appeared uninvited at the doorstep, rain dripping from his jacket. His grin was sharp, his voice low. Mark said, "I can help with money, but you know the cost." Emily's fists tightened, the velvet box hidden in her pocket. She said, "I'd rather drown than owe you." His eyes narrowed, amusement fading into menace. Noah's cough echoed from the bedroom, slicing through the silence. Emily stepped into the doorway, blocking him from entering. Emily said, "Leave now, or I'll bury the past myself." Mark smirked, but the storm behind her eyes forced him back into the rain. Emily sat on the floor beside Noah's bed after Mark's departure, her body trembling from fear and fury. Noah stirred, opening his eyes to her silent tears. Noah said, "You're shaking, Mom." She brushed his hair back, forcing a smile that cracked at the edges. Emily whispered, "It's nothing you need to carry." His hand reached for hers, weak but grounding. "Noah," said, "you don't have to do this alone." She pressed his palm to her cheek, the warmth anchoring her back from breaking. Outside, the storm softened, but inside, the weight only grew heavier. Emily sat frozen on the couch, the phone pressed to her ear as the words cut through her. Dr. Harris said, "Noah's condition worsened because his medication was tampered with months ago." Her breath stopped, the room spinning with betrayal. Emily said, "Tampered? By who?" Silence lingered, heavy and cruel. He finally whispered, "Tests suggest it was deliberate." Emily's stomach twisted as her thoughts raced toward Mark. Her pulse thundered, rage clawing at her ribs. She dropped the phone and covered her face, trembling. Emily whispered, "God, what have you done to us?" The truth poisoned the air, tearing her world apart. She stormed into Noah's room, her heart torn between fury and despair. He stirred at her entrance, coughing weakly. "Noah," said, "What's wrong, Mom?" Emily forced a smile, though tears betrayed her. Emily said, "Nothing you need to carry." He frowned, sensing the lie. Noah whispered, "You always protect me from monsters. But what if one's already here?" Her body shook as she kissed his forehead. Emily whispered, "Then I'll fight harder." She tucked the blanket closer, shielding him from shadows she could not name aloud. The gift in the nightstand seemed to glow with unshed truths. The next morning, Emily confronted Mark outside his car, anger blazing like fire. Emily shouted, "You poisoned my son." He smirked, leaning against the hood. Mark said, "I never touched him, but I knew who did." Her fists clenched, the urge to strike overwhelming. Emily said, "You knew, and you let him suffer." His eyes darkened, guilt flickering like lightning. Mark said, "I owed money. They threatened me. I kept quiet." Her voice broke, each word like a blade. Emily said, "Your silence was murder." The parking lot swallowed her scream, echoing back her fury. Emily drove home with trembling hands, every breath shallow. The steering wheel felt like a weapon she could not release. She whispered, "I will not let this destroy us." The velvet box on the seat caught her eye, the promise inside heavier now. Emily said, "Noah, this gift is my truth, not theirs." Tears blurred the road, but she pushed forward. She thought of Noah's laugh, his stubborn strength. Emily whispered, "We will not be broken by lies." The sky cracked with thunder as she pulled into the driveway, her resolve hardening into armor. Back inside, Emily sat by Noah's bed, holding the velvet box. He watched her with weary eyes, confusion written in his pale face. Noah said, "What's in there, Mom?" She smiled softly, voice trembling. Emily said, "Something that carries my love when I can't." He reached for it, fingers brushing hers. Noah whispered, "You've already given me everything." Her tears spilled, heart breaking at his innocence. Emily kissed his hand, pressing the box to her chest. Emily said, "This will be yours soon, I promise." The storm outside roared, but inside, love burned louder than betrayal. Emily stood at Mark's door, rain dripping from her coat, fury burning in her eyes. He opened it, smirk fading when he saw her resolve. Emily said, "You will tell me everything now." Mark's jaw tightened, silence daring her to break. She stepped forward, voice trembling but sharp. Emily said, "Your silence already cost him years. It will not cost him more." Mark sighed, shoulders heavy with regret. Mark said, "I didn't poison him. But I hid the truth. I was afraid. She clenched her fists, tears mixing with rain. Emily whispered, "Afraid? You chose fear over my son's life." The confrontation spilled into his living room, shadows heavy from one lamp. Emily's voice shook the walls. Emily said, "Who else knew? Who else let him suffer?" Mark swallowed, eyes downcast. Mark said, "It was the supplier. I owed them. They cut corners. I stayed quiet." Rage boiled through her veins. Emily shouted, "You let them gamble with my boy's life." Mark's face cracked with guilt. He whispered, "I thought it would pass. I thought it was nothing." She stepped closer, trembling with grief and fury. Emily said nothing. "He is everything." Her tears fell like shattered glass. Back home, Emily collapsed onto the floor, clutching the velvet box. Her body trembled, breath sharp as knives. Noah stirred from his bed, watching her silently. "Noah," said Mom, "what happened?" She looked up, eyes burning with truth she could not speak. Emily whispered, "The world tried to break us." His hand reached toward her, weak but steady. Noah said, "But you didn't let it." She crawled closer, pressing the box against her heart. Emily said, "This gift is my promise. Whatever they take, they can't take us." His eyes softened, tears glistening. Noah whispered, "Then give it now." Emily opened the box slowly, her hands trembling like leaves in the wind. Inside lay the compass wrapped in linen and the folded letter. She placed them gently in Noah's hands. Emily whispered, "This is my heart, my map, my truth." He stared at the compass, awe softening his weary features. "Noah," said, "you kept this for me?" She nodded, voice breaking. Emily said, "To guide you when I can't." His fingers traced the compass edges, tears gliding down his cheeks. Noah whispered, "Then I'll never be lost." The room glowed with fragile light, love anchoring them against despair. Noah clutched the compass, his smile fragile but bright. He whispered, "This is more than a gift. It's proof we survive." Emily kissed his forehead, pressing her lips to his fever-warm skin. Emily said, "Yes, we survived storms, lies, and fear." He closed his eyes, holding the compass to his chest. Noah said, "I'll carry this forever." Emily's tears fell onto his blanket, shining like small stars. She whispered, "And I'll carry you, always." The house was silent, but inside that silence lived their strength. The gift had transformed into something unbreakable, hope that no betrayal could kill. Morning sunlight seeped through the curtains, soft and golden, washing the room in quiet warmth. Emily sat by Noah's bed, her hand wrapped around his. Emily said, "The storm passed, and we're still here." Noah's chest rose gently, his breath steadier than the night before. He whispered, "Your gift saved me, Mom." She smiled, fragile but full of pride. Emily said, "No, you saved yourself. This compass only reminded you how strong you are." Tears glimmered in his tired eyes, and he squeezed her hand faintly, holding on to both hope and her love. Later, Emily walked into the kitchen, bills still stacked like enemies, but her heart steadier. She whispered, "We'll find a way." She poured coffee, the smell grounding her in the present. Mrs. Lane appeared at the door, holding another pie, concern in her eyes. Mrs. Lane said, "How is he?" Emily smiled softly, exhaustion etched in her face. Emily said, "Still fighting, still stronger than I imagined." The kitchen no longer felt like a battlefield, but a refuge. Hope lingered in the steam of her cup, fragile yet alive. Noah sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, the compass turning in his palm. He whispered, "It feels like it belongs to me and to you." Emily sat across from him, her eyes reflecting pride. Emily said, "It belongs to us, to every step we take forward." The rain had stopped, replaced by quiet sunlight on wet streets. Noah smiled faintly, his face pale but peaceful. Noah said, "I'm not afraid anymore." Her heart swelled, the compass glinting like a promise kept. Evening came, the house quiet except for Noah's steady breathing. Emily tucked him into bed, brushing his hair gently. He whispered, "Thank you for never giving up." She kissed his forehead, whispering, "I never will." The compass rested on his nightstand, glowing faintly in the lamplight. The velvet box lay open, empty but full of meaning. Emily sat watching him drift to sleep, her heart both heavy and light. She whispered, "Rest, love. Tomorrow we fight again. But tonight, we dream." In the final quiet, Emily sat alone in the living room, hands clasped tightly. She whispered, "I would do it all again, every sacrifice, every tear." Her eyes drifted to Noah's door, the faint sound of his breathing her only anchor. She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion wash over her, yet peace lingered like a fragile flame. Emily said, "For you, I will always find a way." The night deepened, but love kept the house alight.